Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Sometimes people, when they are praised too much, that gets to their heads and they really think they are more than they are. Sometimes these people or some people are just pushed forward and used for a while. They don't realize that, or maybe they do realize it. And after they are of no use, they are just discarded and then they just fall flat on their face. But these guys, if they realize it, that this is just a temporary thing and they are praised and pushed forward and promoted, like Zelensky, for instance, to fit a certain kind of narrative, and they know that, they don't become paranoid or narcissistic. They say, okay, I understand that, but at least I enjoy the ride. But there are some other people, the other category of people who really believe that they are who everybody says they are. For instance, I am almost certain that Zelensky and other Ukrainian guys in charge of the nation of Ukraine at this point, they really think that they are what, let's say, People's Magazine or the American, I don't know, some officials are calling them, and some media outlets and some weasels over there call them the great generals, the courageous, the most fantastic, the so on. They're not. But anyway, or maybe they're not as they think they are, or at least as these guys are trying to convince us of their worth or value. Now, they are not succeeding with you and I anyway, but I'm talking about here about Danilov. Danilov, as some of the Ukrainian guys in charge of, as I said, Ukrainian nation, and I'm emphasizing that, they really think that they are the center of the universe. Why? Because they were invited to speak in front of, all kind of parliaments, shook hands with kings and queens and whomever, and they really think they're important. And why not? It seems like all the doors open for them. So they really believe that they can, challenge Iran, or they can challenge whomever, because daddy is right there and their daddy promotes them, uses them for now. They're useful idiots. So some of them really believe they are the center of the universe. So we have here this guy, and whose name is Danilov, this right here, Oleksiy Danilov, who is the Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine. Now, I have my personal assessment of, obviously, of this person, but now he thinks that everything that happened, happens, and will happen on this planet is because of Ukraine and Ukrainians. Well, I'm sorry to break the news to this guy, but it's not so. But he is at that point of paranoia or narcissism that he really thinks that. This is what he said. Ukraine's Security Council. Ukrainians ruined USSR. Same to happen with Russia. So, I watched a movie a while ago, a very, very nice movie, a comedy. It was called My Big Fat Greek Wedding. It's silly, but very, very funny. Why is it funny? It's because I met some Greek friends, and I saw certain things, that looked similar at a low, not at the same intensity as the comedy made it to be. But over there you had the old guy, and he is, I think it's Costa from Constantine. Costa, and he's Greek, and he's as the Greeks, and the ancient Greeks played a very important role in our civilization, determinant role. They are like the starters, and then the Romans picked up the flame and took it further. And since then, it seems like it went down, since we got into the Christianity, and then we got back with the Renaissance, where we kind of like, maybe we're not really anyway. So that's my interpretation of life, good or bad. So this Costa thought that everything, more than actually was, comes from Greece. Everything comes from Greece. The Greeks invented everything. So he would make all kind of connections between certain things that did not have anything to do with Greeks. But he made certain kind of connections, pointing out that actually everything is from us. We invented everything. Now the same thing seemed to be with Danilov, who became so that he really think, at least Costa was partly right. But this guy is off. He thinks that without Ukrainians, somehow democracy will perish, the Europe, the Western civilization will be destroyed because of the evil Russians. The fall of the Soviet Union was because of the Ukrainians, brave Ukrainians, and again the brave Ukrainians will destroy the empire, now led by the Russians. Now I understand this is other propaganda, make-believe, and frustration. Usually this is what happens, but the Bible, the Old Testament, is full of this kind of frustration of some nomad, illiterate people wandering in the desert and being upset with the Babylonians. Civilization. So or the Egyptians. If you look at the Old Testament, is the frustration of a shepherd, illiterate bunch of people hating certain kind of civilizations. And every time they do something to those guys, they celebrate. Even now, they celebrate the Passover. Against whom? They celebrate the Purim. Against whom? All right? So the same seems to be with these guys. Are happy, or they think that they will destroy Russia. And they defend the Western civilization. They are defenders. They are Achilles or something. Well, you get to this kind of delusional mentality, you don't end well. And the problem, this is an important person in Ukraine as far as his title says. So let's see his arguments, right? This is from Ukrainska Pravda from today, February 16th, 2023. Alexei Danilov, so he is the Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine and SDC, is convinced, that's even worse, is convinced that Ukraine's victory in the war will lead to the collapse of the Russian Federation. Well, what do you mean this? I would like him to give me details on what victory would look like. Do you mean the Russians will not push the nuclear buttons or something? Or what do you mean? Will they not, how do I call it, mobilize their at least 30 million people for the Great Army in case they are beaten by the NATO? Will they not do that? I mean, really? Really? All right, and this is what this guy said, and I'm quoting. The fact is that they, Russians, know history very poorly, unlike you, it seems like. I can say with certainty that it was Ukrainians who destroyed the Soviet Union. Few people understand how it all started. I can remind you, remind me. When on 2 March 1989, the first ever strike took place in USSR in Vorkuta, involving 176 miners, I can say that 94 of them were Ukrainians. And when they began to be threatened, the next day 58 Ukrainians went down into the mine and did not come out until all their demands were met. From there, the process began. The July miners' strike, and in a very short time the USSR, which was considered a monster that could not be overthrown, collapsed. Did you hear that? So it started with 176 miners, out of which 94 were Ukrainians, right? And then it was 58, and did not want to come out until demands were met. Now, if this would have happened in the bad country of, I don't know, can give you certain names, those guys would never come out, and the demands would have never been met. All right? I guarantee you that. And the same with these guys here. But it seems like USSR was not that oppressive at that time because the leaders were not, the leaders were, some of them or most of them were Russian this time. So it was not the Georgian Stalin in charge, or the other non-Russian Lenin, or maybe Trotsky, or maybe Kaganovich, maybe Yogoda, maybe I can go on and on with certain kind of people that, So this could have not gotten out if they really wanted to take care of them, if you know what I mean. And to think that it started from here, you're very naive. The whole thing was convened between the West and the East, which was the Soviet Union and the United States of America. Do you think that USSR just got their hands off the Eastern Bloc, just like that. They said, well, you mind your own business, we're not going to do anything. Do you think they just said, because of those Ukrainians, we're just not going to defend East Berlin? Do you think that's how it happened? From those 154, the collapse? I mean, and he says that the Russians do not know their history. I'm not Russian, but you can't fool me with this kindergarten history lesson. And besides, if you look at how Soviet Union collapsed and what happened after that, I don't even know if that was how should I put it, the best way to do it. There were many other ways to disintegrate this Soviet Union, many other ways. A lot of people suffered, that's my point, suffered for years after that. Look at Ukraine. Look at Ukraine, how great Ukraine is doing since its independence. Not at all. Look at their per capita. Look how much money, look economically. And they were left alone from 1991 to now. And what happened? They're still poor, they're still corrupt, they're still where they are. And talk about destroying Russia. I mean, you gotta have a little bit of, and he's convinced. When someone is like that convinced, it should just, make you ask yourself a few things. Because he tells you, few people understand. So he puts himself in that little narrow category of geniuses. All right, and then he says, I can say with certainty. And he tells me this miners thing. Good for them, great, courageous miners. So what's your point? It's like unbelievable. And said the same thing will happen in Russia. Okay, can you tell me the winning lottery numbers? How do you know? How do you know? And then the West needs to prepare for this. What? Jesus Christ is going to come and do the same thing to Russia? It's going to be miners again? Is that what's going to happen again? They believe that Russia should remain within the same borders. No, they don't. This is a big mistake. Who's we? You or Ukraine? Ukraine without the West would have been already flattened out. It's going to be as you were in March 2022. Will you be in Istanbul, Turkey, signing documents? That's where you would be without them. So we will definitely break it up. So the West doesn't, but you will. Okay, good luck with that. But then you say, if you are so beaver, then what about the Russians? So if you think that way, shouldn't they think the same way? No, I tell you why. Because you think in terms of religious piety here. You're the good ones, they are the bad ones. And it will be dismantled in the form it is today. It will be difficult, but the victory will be ours. Hurrah! There you go. Good job. So this is Danilov. And the way they talk, for instance, with Iran and other countries, and they demand that everybody else somehow give them something, this is a narcissistic, spoiled brat here. And they can, because it's not them, it's behind them the shadow of the United States of America. Without that, as I said, this would have been settled in 2013. That means nothing would have happened over there, I think. And but with those guys over there, you got a 2014 overthrow, a violent overthrow, over legitimate democratically elected government of Viktor Yanukovych, and so on. We know the history. And then we get to this one. We got the Minsk I, Minsk II agreements. Ukraine did not implement them. Implemented. Why? Because the big boss was over there. Anyway. Kindergarten history lesson from Alexei Danilov. And remember, he is the Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine. So he's not a, doorman or a taxi driver, or I don't want to insult anybody, but, he's not, he's somewhere where he should know better. But these guys opening their mouths just allow me to assess their level. And I don't think he knows, but he plays dumb. I think he really expresses himself very directly. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just. The miners.